Welcome to the WatchGuard 1 Multi-Factor Authentication Sales Training. My name is Alex Cagnoni. I'm the Director of Authentication and will be your host for this next training, a WatchGuard Authpoint Product Overview. During this session, you will learn which are the main components for Authpoint. You are going to see how it works for the different use cases that we talked about in the last session. You will also learn why Authpoint is an application that uses WatchGuard Cloud as its platform for management and authentication. So let's get started. Authpoint is, of course, a multi-factor authentication solution which allows you to protect resources from being accessed by intruders. In the last session, we learned that more than 80% of the attacks will use at some point stolen credentials or weak passwords. Authpoint will protect those credentials in a way that, if someone tries to use them, it will be detected and blocked. The way we do that is through a mobile app. Once you activate a token inside your Authpoint app, you will be able to use it in many ways to protect your resources. The best way to use it is with push-based authentication. You receive an authentication request on your phone and you approve or deny. Other methods are QR code and OTP based, which we will see in a while. You can have more than one token activated in your app, and you can even add your personal tokens to the app, such as the ones used mainly for social media like Facebook and Gmail. Since it's an end-user facing app, we deliver it translated to about 11 languages to enhance the user experience. All management is done through WatchGuard Cloud, a multi-tier, multi-tenant platform in the cloud. Once you activate a license and log in, the Authpoint management is ready to be configured, and you can have a user tested and running as fast as in a few minutes. And an important piece for any MFA solution is which resources you can protect, which means third-party products you integrate with. Firewalls, cloud applications, remote access applications, and others. This is why WatchGuard has an ecosystem team, which works focused on testing and delivering integration guides. Today we have more than 60 integration guides just for Authpoint. So we talked about push technology and why it's secure and has the best user experience. And this is why. The user logs into a protected resource using username and password, for example. This is sent out to WatchGuard Cloud, which will verify if the credentials are correct, and the user has the right to access this specific resource. If everything is good, a push notification is sent to the user. It will tell the user which resource the user is trying to access and where this request is coming from. It's context information that will help the user make the right decision when approving or denying the access. If that's the user, he or she approves and the user is granted access to the resource. Plain and simple. No more carrying key fobs around or typing in 6-digit OTPs after the password or being tricked by hackers to give away their OTPs through social engineering calls or when redirected to a fake website. That's Authpoint, the first application that was built up for WatchGuard Cloud. Through this platform, Authpoint will protect user identities, which could be local, enterprise, and partners, protecting them when trying to access different resources such as cloud applications, computers, servers, remote access applications, VPNs, and much more. And everything is done using our user-friendly Authpoint app for mobile devices. And later in Q2 2019, we're going to be supporting also third-party, time-based, one-time password hardware tokens, those key fobs. That's usually if you have users in your network refusing for some reason to install and use the app in their phone. The Authpoint app is available for iOS and Android platforms. It's free to download, and you can install both your Authpoint tokens or your personal social media tokens. If a user for some reason is not willing to install the Authpoint app and activate their token and is requesting a hardware token, it's always important to remind them about the fact that Authpoint app doesn't track or expose user information. That's a very important point. You don't need to carry anything else. A push request and response use almost nothing of data. They can use the same app to protect their Facebook, Gmail, or any personal account that provides a Google Authenticator type of token for no additional cost. It is much easier to answer a push request than to type a one-time password every time. If you have a smartwatch synchronized with your phone, you can even approve the push requests on your watch. And you can also personalize the tokens to give it a personal touch, such as the name and image. And how easy it is to activate a token? That's very easy. Once a user is added to AuthPoint, and it can be done in a couple of ways, by manually creating the user, or by synchronizing with Active Directory or any other LDAP server, an activation email is sent to the user. The activation email will show where to download the app from, and you can easily activate a token in a couple of seconds in two ways. If you're reading the email from your mobile phone, just click on Activate. That's it. If you're reading the email from your computer, just open your AuthPoint app and click on the QR code reading icon to open the camera and read it. Your token will be active in a few seconds. Different from a hardware token, users can start using it right away. There's nothing to be sent out. Another very important aspect is that we use a technology where the token secret keys, which makes it unique, are created dynamically during the activation, so it cannot be cloned. Just make a test. Try to activate a token twice and see what happens. No luck the second time, right? Now, add a social media token. You can use Facebook or Gmail, for example, and read the QR code from two different devices. You will have clones of your tokens, not very secure. If someone gets a copy of your QR code, your token is not secure anymore, but not with AuthPoint. Now let's learn about the different authentication options that AuthPoint has to offer. The first one is push-based authentication. It is an online authentication method since it requires data connection from your phone, either Wi-Fi or through the carrier network. As we have seen before, this is the best method since it has good usability and security at the same time. If you don't have data connection on your phone, you don't have to worry about it. We provide a couple of offline authentication methods. The first one and more secure is the QR code-based authentication. Instead of sending a push request, the resource you're trying to authenticate to will show you a challenge QR code. This QR code is completely encrypted, and only the token from the user it's intended to can read it. All you have to do is open the AuthPoint app, and as we did for the activation, we again select the QR code reader button. It will open the camera, read and decrypt the challenge, and provide the same information as if you were receiving a push request. Now, instead of approving through a button, you will type in the one-time use response. Remember that we don't have the data access to the phone. AuthPoint also supports some legacy time-based one-time passwords, which can be used but not recommended, since they can be potentially shared over the phone through social engineering or by having the user type that into a fake website, acting as a man in the middle. QR code-based authentication should be the preferred method to use offline, since you need to have your phone and point it into the QR code in order to read and get the response. So again, three methods, one online authentication method and two offline authentication methods. Another very important AuthPoint feature is the mobile phone DNA. The generation of a time-based one-time password is done by getting the token's unique key and the current UTC time. This is the Greenwich time, always used as a time reference. This goes into encryption and hash algorithm, and the result is formatted into usually 6 digits OTP. Now we do it better. When we activate a token, we generate a DNA or fingerprint of the mobile device. What we do is that we get some unique hardware and software data and create this DNA, nothing more than a hash of the data. We then send only the DNA to the cloud to the token records. And it's important to mention we send the DNA only, not the collected data, which is then discarded. Every time the user is authenticating, no matter which method is being used, we take the unique key, the current UTC time, and we generate the DNA again. And we use the DNA in this calculation. What does it mean? It means that if in some way your device has been cloned, the DNA will be completely different and the token will not authenticate anymore on the cloned device. So this is a protection against cloning. Some people might say, well, maybe I would like to clone it so I can have the token on my phone and also on my tablet. Well, don't worry about it. AuthPoint is charged per user, not per token, which means that the user can have multiple unique tokens in multiple devices with no additional cost. Let's now get back to our AuthPoint MFA use cases. Remember them. Those are some common use cases, are not the only ones. Again, you can use AuthPoint to protect employee PC and server login, both locally and remotely using something like Remote Desktop or RDP. You can protect cloud applications adding the value of Web Single Sign-On. It can also protect remote access applications and VPNs, and privileged user elevation. It is now time to see how it works. Windows and Mac OS protection is done by installing an agent. This agent can be downloaded from AuthPoint in the cloud with the necessary configuration files. Once installed, it will start controlling the access to this computer for all users. For the end user, it won't change the authentication page. The user will start logging in normally as they do it every day. For example, by putting in their username and password. Once this is validated by Windows or the Mac OS, the user authentication information will be sent out to the cloud to decide if the user has access or not to this computer and how the user needs to be authenticated. You may configure different users to log into the same computer with and without MFA, for example. If a user was configured by AuthPoint to log in without MFA, which I don't recommend, nothing will change. They will get to their desktop. Now, if they are required to use MFA, let's see what happens. A window shows up with all the authentication options configured to that user. In this case, it gives the user the option to log in using push or log in offline using QR code or OTP. By the way, in order to log in offline, make sure the user logs in online at least once so the AuthPoint agent can download the necessary credentials for offline login. Just select the authentication option and log into the computer. Now let's say the user forgot their mobile phone at home or lost their hardware token once we add support to that. They can still log in for a short period of time if the AuthPoint administrator allows that. There's an option to do that which involves the user communicating to the admin that a phone or token was lost or forgotten, so a key can be added to release the use of the computer for a predetermined number of hours. Here's the use case. If you have a customer where employees are working remotely from home or traveling with their laptops, or a customer which needs to protect their access to Windows servers with or without RDP, this is a great case for AuthPoint. Next use case, let's see how it works for VPNs. If you're using push-based authentication, that's the easiest way, since you don't have to give too much instructions to the users. They will start the VPN the same way they do it today. They will just put their username and password. The firewall or VPN server will forward the authentication request to AuthPoint, which will validate if the user has access to this resource and if the password is correct. If all good, it sends a push authentication request to the user. The user will approve and the VPN connection will be established. If someone stole the user's credentials, the user will receive an authentication request out of the blue. Since this is not the user, they will deny and block the attack immediately, and will know this is time to change the password as well. If you're using or planning to use legacy OTPs, the change to the user will be that they will have to type in the password followed by the 6 digits OTP to authenticate. It is not the best experience but works fine. The advantages of this use case: easy cross-selling with Firebox or any other firewall vendor. Remember that AuthPoint is a standalone solution. Always make sure that customers understand that they need MFA and there will be almost no impact to the user experience. It's even better because the user will feel they are more in control of their credentials. And it works in similar ways with other third-party remote access solutions as well, such as Citrix NetScaler, now called Citrix Gateway. Citrix can forward the authentication request to AuthPoint using radios or even using WebSSO and SAML. Like in the VPN case, AuthPoint will validate the username and password. If everything is correct, a push message is sent to the user's mobile phone so he or she can approve or deny. Now let's see the use of AuthPoint to protect cloud applications. As we learned in the last session, cloud applications can be easily and securely protected by creating a trust relationship between them and the identity provider, which in this case is AuthPoint. Once this relationship is properly configured, anytime a user needs to access a protected cloud resource, the user will be redirected to AuthPoint so they can be authenticated. If the user was recently authenticated and the browser was not closed, AuthPoint will detect that and approve the authentication right away. No need to re-authenticate. The easiest way for the users is just to bookmark their web single sign-on portal URL or AuthPoint IDP portal URL, as it is called as well. Each company will have its own URL, always authpoint.watchguard.com / the name of the company. It will first ask for the username or email address. Once confirmed that the user exists in this AuthPoint tenant, it will ask for your password, which can be your Active Directory password, and then you can use push, for example, to complete the authentication. All the user needs to do is approve it. Once approved, the user will be presented with all cloud applications he or she is allowed to access, without the need to re-authenticate. All the user needs to do is click on the desired application and it will open with no new authentication or different password put in. A great user experience. So this use case presents an opportunity for AuthPoint whenever a customer is using any kind of cloud application. A common one is Office 365, no doubt, but other solutions might be in use as well. Maybe a file sharing application such as Box, Dropbox, or Citrix File Share. Or some CRM solution like Salesforce or Sugar CRM, a development application like Jira, or a web conferencing tool such as GoToMeeting and Zoom. Once AuthPoint is configured, you can easily integrate dozens of cloud applications as long as they support the industry standard called SAML. You might also ask, what about client applications? You use an Outlook client on your phone, maybe a Salesforce client or a Concur client. No worries, those apps usually interact the same way, and they will open a browser to authenticate within AuthPoint. Once authenticated, they keep a long-term session key that will let the user continue using the app without re-authenticating every time. Let's take a look at this moment at some of the management features. First of all, let's see how WatchGuard Cloud interface looks like. When you log in, you would see WatchGuard Cloud in two different ways depending on your profile. If you're a subscriber, meaning that you are just a consumer of a service, you will see an interface to configure your product. Now, if you're a service provider, this means that you're entitled to create subscribers and manage them. With that, the interface will be similar to what we are showing in this slide. As a service provider, you can buy AuthPoint license, and those will go to a bucket of users. Those users can be allocated to your subscribers, which are actually your customers, the way you want. It's all part of your inventory, and you can allocate and deallocate from your subscribers, charging them the way you want as well. Other advantage of being a service provider is that you can create as many trials as you want by yourself. You don't need to call a WatchGuard representative to do that. Once you create the trial, you can allocate to a new account and configure it. You will also see your own tenant where you can allocate your NFR license and use internally, or to show customers how AuthPoint works. And finally, reports and notifications can also be sent out to service provider operators, so they have up-to-date information about what's going on within each subscriber. Now let's take a look at the subscriber view. As a service provider, you can also select one of your customers' account that you manage, and you will pivot to the same view. Once you do that, you will be redirected to a dashboard where you can see real-time information from your tenant. You can also see logs, reports, and configure notifications. But for the sake of time, let's start with the configuration page. The main page shows some information about your actual configuration, such as how many resources you are protecting from each type: cloud applications, VPNs, computer and server logon, or agents. You can also have a quick view of the number of user groups you created. Clicking on Configure AuthPoint will take you to the configuration view. The Users view will show you the list of users configured, their status, and if they have tokens allocated. And user provisioning is really fast. You can create users manually or just synchronize one or more group of users from your Active Directory or LDAP server. When users are synchronized, they will receive activation emails so they can download the AuthPoint app, activate their tokens, and start using them. And as we mentioned before, a single user can have multiple tokens. For example, if they want to have a token in their mobile phone and another one in their tablet, so if they leave one at home, they can still authenticate with the other one. The reports page provides some widgets that can be really useful before you even generate the reports. For example, a widget can show you the usage per resource. So which protected resource like cloud or VPN application is being mostly used. In the top, you will see the authentications over time. This chart can show you some trends, such as days of the week or times of the day where you have more authentications. It will also show authentication errors. And if you see some spike on authentication errors, it could mean users are having difficulties authenticating within some resource, or someone is trying to attack your company and is being blocked, either by wrong credentials or authentication denied by AuthPoint. And finally, an important one that shows denied push notifications. In a normal use, users will authenticate to resources approving the push. If a user denied a push, it means that someone probably found out the user's credentials, but the attacker didn't count on the fact that the user had AuthPoint. So the user received the authentication request out of the blue and correctly denied it. For the administrator, it shows that it is probably time for a user to change the password. To finalize this chapter on the product, a good guidance when going out on a sales meeting is to make sure your prospect understands that an MFA solution should be as hassle-free as possible. The way an MFA solution might impact the user experience is also called user friction. The harder to use, more friction the solution adds to the user experience. Hardware tokens, especially the USB ones, can add a lot of friction to the user. There's all the logistics involved. It might require drivers installation or maybe not even support some environments. For example, if you're trying to authenticate with the browser in your mobile phone, how to connect the USB token? The solution must also cover all environments you want to protect today and maybe plan for tomorrow. So the number of integrations and the different types of applications is important when you're choosing a solution. And finally, SMBs don't want to buy servers, hardwares, operating systems, and have trained staff. They need to focus on their business. Cloud-based applications like AuthPoint are important to create a clean integration environment with the possibility of being managed by a service provider. So we're reaching the end of this chapter and some of the things we learned. AuthPoint is an application that uses WatchGuard Cloud as a platform for management and authentication. WatchGuard Cloud can be used by partners or service providers as a platform to manage and build their AuthPoint customers the way they want. AuthPoint app is better used with online authentication using push. It provides context about the authentication and the user just needs to approve or deny. But if you don't have data access on your phone, no problem. You can use QR code for offline authentication, or even legacy time-based OTPs. And finally, a great differentiator from AuthPoint is the fact that it uses the device DNA to protect the authenticator against cloning. With that, we conclude this chapter. Thanks for joining. See you in the next section.